KTN News. Get the whole story. Transform Kenya. Empower our nation.
All right. Welcome back to this wonderful conversation on the involvement of the youth in matters food systems in this country. It is of great concern that the country has a population of 80% being classified as youth, but not really engaged in key issues as food systems in this country. And because of that great concern, our next key addresser I'd like to welcome, Wairimu Wahomo, is the Kenya Country Director of Concern Worldwide, with her remarks. The floor is yours.
Is it on? Okay. So, good evening.
Good evening.
And all protocols observed. I have been asked to speak into the perspectives on the challenges faced by youth in the fight against hunger, including access to capital, skills, interests, and land. So just to start us off today, if we got an opportunity to read the papers, the Standard newspaper, page 2, and this is a coincidence. I'm not highlighting them because they're a partner for this, but they had a relevant article today on why Kenya is a graveyard of industries and big companies. And so one of the things that they reported is a crisis of the agricultural sector and the exit of a number of companies, Procter & Gamble, GlaxoSmithKline, etc. Now that has implications in terms of agriculture, in terms of the youth across the value chain. And that is why this conversation today is so important. And then I make reference to the GHI report, which again, my colleague, Christian from WHH, and a great partner of Concern Worldwide when it comes to the production of this report, captures that currently 42% of the world population is under 25. And yet, we are confronted with unsustainable and highly vulnerable food systems. Against that, the average age of a farmer in Kenya is 60 years. So again, a huge disconnect between that most of our youth are between, most of our population is under 25. Most of our youth go up to the age of 35. You can contest that if you're beyond that. But then the average age of a farmer in Kenya is 60 years. And that's because the way we perceive farming is still very negative. It's what you do either for subsistence or when you have no other choice or alternative. A very negative attitude and perception that has continued to impact on the hunger situation in Kenya. Now, Concern Worldwide has a goal. Our goal number 2 is about driving urgent action on hunger, conflict, and the climate crisis. And as a Kenya Country program here, we complement that by the work that we do in the most marginalized areas in this country and where you find high incidences of hunger, and that is the Asal regions, Marsabit, Isiolo, Tana River, Turkana, and in the informal settlements of Nairobi, where we also have incidences of hunger. Now, People's Agency, and I want to replace that with Youth Agency, is the best driver for change and sustainability. So logically, you want the majority of your population to be drivers in processes. So if you're running a business and youth are not a core target of that business, you can be sure you will be folding up sooner than later. So why is it then that when we come to addressing critical issues of hunger, we tend to treat the youth as secondary, and yet they're a majority in our population? So when launching this particular report, we are looking to encourage the development of the capacities of the youth in education and in entrepreneurship. One thing that I know from my experience many, many years ago as a student is that, and I don't know, and I hope that that has changed, but I'm not sure. If you got admitted to study agriculture, it was often, with a lot of regret. And you often found people that had been admitted to study agriculture explaining themselves. I missed course X by 1 point, and so I was admitted to study agriculture. Again, issues around perception, how we perceive issues of agriculture, issues of food security, and related. Now, in the current GHI report that we are about to launch, Kenya is placed position 90 out of 125. A few years ago, we were at position 85. So we're not doing very well. So if this was a report card that you are taking to your parents, 90 out of 125, what would your parents say? Well done? Huh? Hey, the youth, so much vegan energy on this platform. What would your parents say, 90 out of 125? Huh? Pull up your socks? Pull up your socks, or if you want to do something else, let us know, because this doesn't seem to be working for you, isn't it? Yeah. And so it's a serious issue, the issue of hunger in this country, and we need to really critically and honestly engage to see how we can reverse the situation, the current situation. And so one of the ways we envision this as an organization concerned worldwide is through amplifying the dignity of youth. The dignity of youth. And when the dignity of youth is amplified, we are saying we want to move away from tokenism, where we invite the youth and they dance for us, to ensuring that they actually sit at the table to contribute to the formulation of policies, but also to the implementation of interventions that will have the country improve its index, isn't it? So the next time you're invited to the table, beyond dancing, also ask what else? How else can we contribute to the program? How else can we contribute to the policies around hunger and food security and related? So dignifying the youth. We are also looking to ensure that we again have the youth lead in the challenging of structural norms, especially when it comes to female youth, being involved in the spaces where real conversations and real decisions are made when it comes to issues of addressing food security, addressing agriculture, addressing hunger. So we all know that women are at the forefront, they are caregivers, etc. So they understand the implications of hunger on the children, on the household, on the community. But again, when it comes to conversations around that, then you find that they tend to be secondary or even tertiary participants in conversations that are really central and critical to them. And we're saying that the youth have the opportunity, you've got the privilege of education, you've got the privilege of being innovative, you've got the privilege of having the ability to take different conversations back to your homes and to your communities to ensure that the conversations around hunger are understood differently. So one of the things about hunger that comes to the mind of many is that it's often seen as an absence of food. But there is also hunger because of the quality of food that is available. You remember how we ate bread, loaf, biscuits from the tuck shops, etc., a lot of carbohydrates. And what we're saying is that we want a diversified cuisine. I remember the conversation that you had here in your skit, also around food wastage, and not just the choices that are accessible, especially to those that we consider to be the most marginalized and most vulnerable members of our community. And so I'm saying that we have the youth, and we have an opportunity to utilize the youth, their brilliance, their innovation, also their courage, so that we can have different conversations around these choices. But these choices need to be supported by actual commitment by us, our governments, etc. So at our level, as an organization, we commit at least 70% of the resources that we have to address issues around health and nutrition, food security, livelihoods, and WASH. And we hope that the same can also be reflected in national budgets, where we can have 70% actual humanitarian and development work for sustainable change. Now, important is the interlinkages between hunger, the youth, and the development ambitions of any country. We cannot develop on an empty stomach. We cannot develop when we continue to have high incidences of malnutrition, undernutrition, child wasting, child stunting. Surely, it robs of the dignity of our population. And so for us to call ourselves developed, there is growth and then there is development. And for us to really consider ourselves developed, we must then address the very critical issues of hunger, and especially within the category of children under 5, because that's a very critical component when it comes to addressing issues of hunger and the implications of the same. So finally, as I close, I'd like to say that we consider youth as champions and heirs of our food system. So when you're an heir, when you know that you have the right to inherit good things, then you will be committed. And even us, we will be committed to ensuring that we pass on to you food systems that are dignified, and we give you the opportunity to learn so that you don't have a crisis when it comes to taking up your leadership role within our food system. Again, I talked about your privilege of exposure, your privilege of education, and also to ensure that we maintain our food sovereignty as a country, but also as a continent. When we talk about food sovereignty, we are talking about an appreciation of our cultural foods, of our indigenous foods that are easily accessible, easily affordable, but yet have been abandoned over the years and subsequently have an impact when it comes to issues of addressing hunger. People are hungry when, for example, they have pumpkins around their house. People go hungry when they have manago around their house. And, you know, it's those conversations that we want to change so that we have an appreciation of those foods and we can go back to where we were at many years ago. And then finally, for transformational change, ensure that we are looking into issues of gender equality. We are also looking into issues of good governance, including how we make decisions around the politics of land access and control. Very important for the youth, because if you make a decision to go into agriculture, for example, but what you have is access only, but not control over the piece of land that you're utilizing, then it limits your ability to access credit, but also to make long-term decisions over that piece of land. And that subsequently also impacts how we do our food in this country. I thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much, Asante Sana, for your wonderful address. And thank you also for the teaser of the report. Key issues coming off this discussion. Now, gentlemen, ladies, you know, I wanted to balance off the panel, so I wanted the lady to sit at least at certain intervals. We've talked about gender balance. Still, the representation here is a little bit lacking, but we'll do better as time goes by, right? But thank you very much for making time at this particular moment. Actually, I would like to introduce my panel quickly before we move into the discussions. We have Mr. Kubok Leonard, Deputy Director, Crops Resource Management, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. Thank you very much for making time, sir, representing the PS State Department of Agriculture. Next to him, we have Jackson Makenya, who is the Food Security and Livelihoods Coordinator at Concern Worldwide, Asante Sana. Next to Jackson, we have Mr. Raymond Ocheng, who is the Secretary Youth Development, Ministry of Youth Affairs, Sports and the Arts. Thank you very much. Next to Mr. Raymond, we have Winnie Egon, who is the Food Systems Analyst at the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And next to Winnie, we have Lucy Wangare, who is the founder of Onion Doctor Limited. I admired you. People are crying a lot when you're finding that particular organization because of the onions, but thank you very much for making time. And lastly, you have Dr. Robert Becher, who's the Senior Lecturer, Agribusiness and Rural Development at JCOT. We appreciate, gentlemen. Now, we don't have much time, as you can tell, yeah? So we'll be very straightforward, and I'll start right here, because as a ministry, you are responsible when we talk about food in this country. As a government, you are the people that we look up to. Mr. Kubok, talk to me. First of all, how is the youth engagement in decision-making, in policy formation, in those simple things that we talk about? And I'm going to hand you this wonderful mic. Tell us, even what percentage of the ministry are youths in that particular ministry? You can just talk to it. It's very on, sir.
Thank you, our moderator, for this wonderful national forum on engaging the youth. A very quick check on the figures regarding the population of the youths in the ministry. I agree it is quite low, and the main reason for that, especially with regards to youths placed to work in various projects, programs, is that we have had a moratorium on employing or employment for quite a while, close to 13, 14, 15 years, because of the challenges that the government has had with the country, not the government necessarily, but the country has had in terms of economic performance. But there is a lot of discussion, especially with regards to the fact that the entire workforce under public extension service is aging because of the exits, either natural or otherwise, from public service. So this is a major topical issue at the policy level, and very soon we should be able to see some progress in terms of engaging more youthful officers within the national and the county government and projects and programs. But that as it may be, we have leveraged on the presence of a very youthful and vibrant youth bulge in this country on matters, policy making, policy discussions, development, implementation, monitoring and evaluation. We have put in place very robust systems and processes as envisioned by our Constitution of Kenya 2010 on public participation and other legal, regulatory and policy frameworks, that we must have very meaningful engagement of the youthful population in all aspects of policy development, implementation, monitoring, reporting, and evaluation. So that is the position of the government.
All right.
Believe you me, any new policy, any policy that has been designed, developed, and being rolled out over the last 13 or so years has had youthful representation, meaningful youthful representation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kubok. Jackson, I know you come from the NGO world, and you are on the ground. You're interacting with the value chain of the food system, essentially from production to markets. Your observation, first of all, goodwill from the government seems to be very important, and that involvement. Do you think if we start foundationally at that, there is an element of change that can be brought if we have more involvement of the youth from the get-go, from the ministry level? Can that be a trickle down, or are we having a situation of it has to be bottom up? So NGO worlds, you have to go to the bottom and work this system up and involve the youth in matters food systems.
Thank you, Noah. It's a two-way. I think we don't have just one way of doing this. The government investment is key. And to give a perspective, why do NGOs exist? NGOs exist to just fill a gap. Whatever we are doing is providing the basic services or supporting the government to provide basic services where agriculture falls. So working in tandem with the government is very important. As NGOs, our role is very critical. And one of the roles is why we are here. What we are doing today is shaping a conversation on food systems. Without this conversation, then we'll not be able to know where the shoe is pinching us. Where should the investments go? The second role of the NGO is to ensure that the voices of the marginalized, for us to work where there are gaps, it means that population is already a marginalized population. So for them to participate fully in the government systems, then we have to ensure that they are knowledgeable and aware on when that public participation should be happening. They have to contribute to the development of the county integrated development plans, the county contingency plans, the annual development plans, and whatever priorities that are supposed to be implemented within the communities are included for funding to be allocated by the government. And if the government does not allocate enough resources, we know that the needs are so many, then the NGOs come in direct investment. We support the government to put in money. I'll give an example. For example, in the last 2 years, Kenya experienced a drought that has never been seen in the last 40 years. And what the NGOs do, an NGO like Concern invested close to 1 billion Kenya shillings in direct cash injection in the marginalized communities in the northern Kenya. So that is the level of investment that we want to put, and we want to assure the government that if they put similar investments, then our population will be talking about food security and not food scarce.
Definitely. And when we go to the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Sports and the Arts, I think Raymond, looking at all the microphones actually are working, but thank you very much for being generous, because that is our system, yeah? I wish it was a plate of food just passing around. It would really be very symbolic. But Raymond, looking at the ministry, the second and the third bit of it is what takes precedence. So the sports and the arts. The other day, artists are complaining they're not being paid enough. The ministry comes in strongly. We lost one of our greatest athletes in the country. The ministry was very vibrant about that. In terms of talking about food systems, encouraging young people to go into agricultural production, what is the ministry doing?
Thank you so much, Noah, and I really appreciate to be here, and also to salute the young guys who are here who represent millions of young people. First of all, to observe that 75% of our population falls between ages 0 to 35. So literally you have a youth nation. And this is not only Kenya, but in terms of the median age of youth in Africa, we're talking about 19 years. So the first thing that we ask ourselves, how do we have the majority of the consumers not held accountable to participate in the production? And I want to appreciate the country director for Concern, who raised very fundamental issues, that the majority of the young people that you see here, I think there's this buzzword about youth and young, and very flashy presentations that we take and we make, and even sometimes how young people are brought up on stages, and I'm not saying here because we are here to speak about the young people, and I think the fact that we coined this theme to be youth-centric, then just show how intentional we are about pushing this major population. But this buzzword remains on paper. So the question is, and I think it was said by the previous speakers, do we make youth to be, the challenge of the youth bulge, do we look at it as an opportunity? It was on the Vice Chancellor's speech. Does it become an opportunity, or it becomes a crisis? And that also has already been reflected in how young people are being engaged. So you'll get, mostly we make young people to be participants, not actively being on the table. And as they always say, if you're not on the table, then you are on the menu. So what I would say is youth is very fundamental. And for us to move to the future of work, the future of the food systems, and not only looking at food systems to be properly established, but how sustainable they are, we must involve young people. So that's why it's an affirmative action by the government to ensure that there's a ministry responsible for youth.
Okay.
So that you come to Kenya, you find a ministry that backstops youth interventions, so that it is not mixed and lost in many other spaces. So the government of Kenya has got a youth development policy of 2019 that is very progressive and is really mainstreaming the food systems that we're talking about right now. But we're going to look at how do we review our youth development policy, and leave alone the policy, Noah. In terms of the constitutional framework that talks about the Article 55, the responsibility that we have on the young people, it is immense. But again, a nation rises or falls around food systems, because now this is now what is going to be driving how healthy we are going to be as a nation, not only just physically, but in terms of what are we going to invest? Because if we do not get food systems right, then we're going to be having a lot of investments from government being on other aspects that then we should have mitigated if at all we looked at this position. So I would not want to go and go berserk in terms of the raft of the measures of what we are doing around, but we are working with FAO, we are working with the partners that we have here, and the Ministry of Agriculture. My brother is here. There are a lot of the Youth Enable program that we are rolling out. We are also trying to look at in terms of the agribusiness to be really domiciled even to the grassroots of where young people are being developed. That's the 4K clubs are already being looked at to be revamped, so that then we look at the mindset. And I want to finish by saying agriculture and food systems have really been depicted with the wrong optics with the young people. Because when you talk about agribusiness, you're talking about a mother with a child, with some hoe, kind of, with the droopy wings, with a malnourished dog behind the scenes. Then how then do we involve these young guys who are tech savvy in terms of that? And then how do we sensitize them to understand the whole value chain, not only to be a farm, but agribusiness and the food systems is a whole value chain that we must unpack. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raymond, for that. I want us to take a short break because those are very heavy points, so that we can just simmer a little bit during the break. When we come back, still the issue about making the food systems value chain and ecosystem are very attractive to young people, and how, I'm pretty sure if we do a survey here, how many people are part of these food systems. Maybe it's not as many as they should, being a young country. So what can we do to push that so that agriculture becomes cool again like it was? So let's take a short break right here on this wonderful National Youth Forum on Matters, the role of youth in shaping food systems. Remember, GHI report is coming up on the 11th of March 2023, so you don't want to miss that. But we go for a break, we come back with more.